Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are back with the third season of the Global Chess League being held here in Mumbai, India. Now, those of you guys who have been following the first couple days of action here in this event are probably wondering why there was no recap yesterday of my game against Alireza Firouzja. The reason for that is that after the game ended, the team rushed back to the hotel, and as it was Tuesday, I would compete in the Title Tuesday event, which was held on chess.com. Unfortunately, the event would not go my way. I would lose a very tense game in the 10th round against Magnus Carlsen from Norway, which cost me chances of winning, but nonetheless, it was a fun event, and that is the reason behind why there was no recap. So without further ado, let's jump into the action from the Global Chess League, and we're going to pick it up with my third round matchup against Alireza Firouzja, who is competing for the Continental Triveni Kings. Now, Alireza is off to a red-hot start. He won his first two games. He beat both Fabiano Caruana from the United States, the world number 3 player, and he won a crushing victory with the black pieces against Gukesh Domaraj from India, the reigning world champion. So Firouzja is 2 out of 2, and he has the white pieces against me in the third round, and let's start with the game. Alireza opens with d4. I play d5, we get c4, and now I play the move d takes c4. Now this is what is known as the classic Queen's Gambit accepted. Alireza plays move e4, trying to build the big white center and attacking the pawn on c4. Here I play the move knight f6, we get e5, knight e5, and now the move bishop takes c4. Now in this position, I played this move bishop to f5. This is a variation that is considered to be a little bit dubious. Quite a few years ago, I actually had this position from the white side against the current FIDE president, Emil Satovsky, a game which was played in the Isle of Man, I believe in the year of 2017, although it might have been 2018, not 100% sure, but nonetheless, I had this position. Now, of course, against the FIDE president, I would go on to defeat Emil with a great win from the white side, but having studied this variation quite a bit since then, as with many different openings in the game of chess, this is considered to be perfectly playable. So here Alireza plays the move knight c3, and now I play the move knight to b6. Now those of you guys who are looking at the eval bar, which is bouncing up and down, you'll probably notice the computer is saying, the weak engine on chess.com, that knight to b4 is a better move here. Knight b4 is playable, but the game is very, very sharp after this move bishop to b3. I'm not going to get into the weeds about the specific variations, but it is anything but clear. So I go knight b6 instead. This was my preparation, and here Alireza plays this move e6. Now you're probably thinking, what's going on? You can just take the bishop. Obviously, if white's move, say I play h6, white takes the pawn, and white is winning the game. But you're thinking, well, just take the bishop. I do take the bishop, but now there's the move queen to a4, both checking the king and attacking the knight at the same time. Here I play this move knight to c6, and now Alireza decides to take the pawn, checking my king. I take back, he takes the knight, and here I play the move e6. We get knight to f3, and now I play h6, stopping knight to g5 check, and Alireza plays bishop f4. Here I go bishop d6, we get bishop g3, and now I play the move rook to f8. Alireza castles, I go king g8, and at this point, it's time to take stock of the position. Both sides have castled their king. Sure, I've manually done it by going king f7, rook f8, and king g8, but both sides have castled. We have a pretty standard position. Black has a 2 Bs in this position, but there is a slight weakness with the pawn on e6. So Alireza plays rook e1, and this is the first new position in the game for me. Up to this point, I was in my preparation, and now I play the move king to h8, trying to dodge any threats on this diagonal. Here we get to move rook to e3. I play queen d7, and now we get to move knight to e4. Now, it's very tricky here because, as you can tell from the time situation, I'm up 6 minutes on the clock. I've been able to play all my moves really quickly, but now I have to come up with a plan. Now, in this position, the computer actually likes to move bishop to g4, trying to undermine this pony on f3 and put pressure on the pawn on d4 here. I rejected this line because I thought after knight to e5 here, let's say I take, after bishop takes, knight takes, and rook takes e5, I thought I had a weak pawn on e6 here, white setting up the double stack, and white should be better. However, the computer shows it after the move rook to f4, pressuring this pawn on d4 here. Let's say white goes knight e4. Black can play the very calm and cool move queen to d7 with the idea of rook to d8, doubling up on this pawn, and black should be completely fine. Now, if I know this plan, it's very easy to find, but I don't know it, and I don't want to spend a lot of time looking for a perfectly precise line, which is why I decided instead to play queen d7. We get knight to e4, and now I play the move rook a d8. Now, this move is a surprisingly bad move in the position. This was a move that I played quickly, and it was based on two big things. First of all, I underestimated the danger of the resulting position after Alireza's next move and the subsequent exchange. The second reason that it's not right is that I actually should have been looking for something very, very concrete here and using this time advantage that I had built up. Now, the computer actually says here that if I play the move bishop to g4, this pressures the knight again. After knight to h4 with the threat of knight g6, this is kind of scary, so it's understandable that I rejected it. After bishop h5, it should be fine. But the line that I should have actually played was bishop takes bishop here, and after h takes g3, the move rook a to d8, setting up a double stack and pressuring this pawn on d4. And after knight c5, queen to d5, and the trade, let's say white goes knight takes b7 and knight takes d4 here. White is a little bit better, but as we're in an end game here, and you combine that with the fact that I have rook d2 and some kind of kebab on the second rank, black should be fine. But I play rook d8, trying to play quickly, playing logical moves. But now after knight c5 and this trade here, the big problem, as we're going to see later in the game, is now the opposite color bishops. Usually this would mean that the position is drawish, but here with the threats of getting a bishop to e5 and pressure on this diagonal, white is actually substantially better. So I go king h7 here. Alireza plays h3, creating the space for the king. It also stops bishop g4 to undermine the knight on f3 here. And now I play queen f7. We get rook e1, rook d5, b4, a6, a4, and now I play the move queen d7. Alireza goes b5, I trade, we get knight to d4, we get the trade, and now the move queen c3. Now, in this position, the move that I probably should have played here was this move rook to d5. The reason I didn't play this move is after c6 takes and queen to d8 here, it looks like the position is very passive. White has bishop to e5, setting up the wooden shield, where both the pawn on c7 and the pawn on g7 are under massive pressure, and it just feels like a very passive position to try to defend. Now, the computer says that after rook to f7 here, black should be defending here, but to my untrained eye and just based on intuition, I didn't like this resulting position. So because I did not like this resulting position, I would end up playing the move rook to d3. Alireza trades, and now he plays the very important move queen a5. Now, I have to admit that this move actually took me by surprise here. Maybe it was a lack of danger or just thinking that it wasn't that bad, because when I went into this line, all that I calculated was the trade of the queens. White takes a pawn, and I thought that in this position after rook e6 here, white has an extra pawn, but after a move like rook to e8 and bishop c6 here, with the opposite color bishops and only this 3-on-2 on the king side here, this should be a draw. So when Alireza played queen a5 here, this really took me aback, and I spent a long time here before playing my next move. Now, the move that I initially wanted to play was c6 here, but after pawn takes and queen c7, white is actually much better, because after queen to c3, for example, rook to d1, queen takes c5, and bishop e5, you'll notice there's massive pressure towards the pawn on g7, and after rook g8, rook to d7, queen c1, and queen g5 guarding the pawn. You might be thinking that black is okay here, but after queen takes c6, I guess I can play queen g6 here, but after f3, with this great bishop, this rook, this queen also pressuring on the 7th rank, maybe there's a way to save this, but it's very, very passive. It really is unpleasant, and there's no chance of counterplay here. So either you're going to lose the game, or you're going to have to defend forever, groveling, and with no increment, and just my general view of what was going on, I didn't want to go for this. So that's why I spent a lot of time here before playing this move rook to f7. You'll notice that I spent over 6 minutes on this move. We get the move bishop takes pawn, and here I play the move bishop e4, pressuring the pawn on g2. Now, Alireza played the move bishop g3, and because I had spent so much time on my previous two moves, now I panicked and I simply lost my mind and played bishop d5. Had I played the move queen to d5, which was the correct move here, I would have set up the threat towards the pawn on g2, as well as pressuring the pawn on c5, and now white would have to find some tremendous moves to win the game. Now, what do I mean by tremendous moves? What I mean by this is that the moves are not super obvious or intuitive. So, for example, as a human, the obvious move to play here is f3, attacking this bishop on e4. But here, black can sack the bishop on f3, and after queen takes c5, excuse me, sorry about the cough. If white plays move king to g2, guarding the pawn from being captured, I can simply play the check back and forth between these two squares, and eventually after queen c2, king h1, and rook takes f3 here, with the rook being active on the 3rd rank, the computer says this should be a draw. So had I played this in the position with queen to d5, the best move for white to play here is the very unusual move king to h2, because after bishop takes g2 is played, you can go rook to e5, queen to f3, and now the excellent move queen to e1. The queen covers a square from the bishop. Bishop has no square available, or else it will be captured. White pressures upon on e6, and now after rook to f5, rook e3, and queen d5, apparently black is maybe in the game. Actually, computer says queen b1 is much better, because after king g8, there's something, maybe h4 here, and white maintains the advantage. Would this have happened in the game? Absolutely not. It would have been really interesting to see what Alireza would have done. I do believe that had I found queen d5, there's a very, very high chance that Alireza would have played f3, and I would have been able to save this game and make the draw. But instead, I simply play the move bishop d5 very quickly, and as soon as I play this move, I realize, what am I doing? White can simply play queen b4, and now white is up a pawn here. White has 5 pawns versus 4. White is threatening to push his p up the board very, very quickly with this dark square bishop here, and I pretty much at this point could resign. When you add in the fact that I spent 6.5 minutes over the last couple of turns, nothing is going right, time pressure is a big deal, and I play the move queen c2. Alireza, of course, plays queen b1, trying to trade off the queens here. I go queen f5, bishop e5, and now I play the move king g8. Alireza obviously trades the queens, and now after the move rook to d1 with these 2 passed pawns rolling up the board, there's nothing that I can do to stop the p. I go rook to d7, we got bishop d6, bishop e6, c6, trade, rook a7, c7, and now I play the move rook a6. Now, king to f7 would have been the best move to try and survive the game here, but after rook to e1 in this position and rook to a8 here, white can simply play a very calm move like f4 followed by bishop to e5. Let's say we get the position like this, for example, and after the move rook to d1, rook to a2, white goes rook d8, I go rook to c2 here, and now white can play a move like rook h8, and with the ability to bring this king over and this pawn being 1 square away from queening, white is completely winning. A sample line would be something like rook to c4 here. White brings the king up, king to e3. Let's say I go back to c4. We get this position. Eventually, white's going to check the king backwards, and now white can start to play. Actually, bishop d6 would not work here. Let's say white goes here, bishop to d6, threatening rook e7. Let's just say I go. Actually, I don't even know where black's supposed to go here. If I go here, there's a check. If I go here, there's a check. It really doesn't matter what I do, but I'm going to lose the game. But I play rook to a6 here. I'm already very low on time and simply panicking. This move loses on the spot, but as we just saw, there's no way to save the game. So I go rook a6. Alireza plays rook to e1, attacking the bishop. And here I resign the game because if I move my king up, white sacks the rook and makes the queen. If I play the move rook takes bishop, white takes this. Again, same thing with the queen. And if I go check, king h2 and rook c1, there's rook e8 check, followed by white queening the pawn. White has an extra rook and white wins. The other way to play here would be to play bishop to d7, but after rook to e7, it's going to be the same thing with rook d8. And if I go bishop to c8, white checks, white takes the bishop, takes, and after rook to d8, pawn guards the rook, white will push the pawn and will reach the exact same position with white having an extra rook or checkmate in a few moves. So after rook to e1, that is why I resigned the game. A very unfortunate loss in a sense because I was able to out-prepare Alireza and play very quickly, but the position was still a little bit worse because what I did was a touch dubious. And to his credit, Alireza found some very, very good moves. Yes, I could have put up better defense. Yes, I could have found queen to d5, and who knows what happens. But you have to tip your cap sometimes when your opponent plays a good game and finds good moves. Combine that with Alireza's good form, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. So I do lose this game against Alireza, but a couple of players on my team, namely Richard Rapport and Volodar Murzin, the reigning World Rapid Champion, would win their games. And so in spite of my loss, the team would get the very, very big victory. So we get a victory in round 3. And of course, today we move on to the 4th round and our 4th match in the event. Now, you'll probably notice that I'm playing black in a lot of these games. It's very unusual to have so many blacks in a row. With our team losing the coin tosses to decide the colors, we end up playing with black for a 3rd time in a row. Of course, as I'm playing on board 1, there are no easy pairings, and I have the black piece against Fabiano Caruana, who's representing the SG Alpine Pipers. So here, Fabiano plays e4, I go e5, knight f3, and once again, I decide to play this classic Damiano gambit in the Petrov defense. Fabi takes, plays d4, we get takes, knight c6, and now we get the move knight c3. Now, in the first round of this event, Maxime Vachier-Lagroff played the move f4 here. d4 is generally considered to be more testing and more principled, so it's no shock that Fabiano, who's known for his great preparation, plays the most critical line. So we take, I go knight c6, and now Fabi plays the move knight c3. Here I take the pawn, we get the trade, and now we get the move knight b5. Now, a couple of months back, I actually had this position against Fabiano in one of the Blitz events. I think it was the American Cup, if I remember correctly. I had this position, and against Fabiano in that game, I made a mistake. I played the move king to d8. I got a much worse position. Ultimately, I would draw the game, but this move is simply bad. This time around, of course, I play the correct move, bishop to b4, checking the king. Fabi blocks, we trade, and now I go king d8. Here, Fabi plays rook to e1, I retreat the knight, and now we get to move bishop c4. I play rook to f8, guarding the pawn from being captured, and Fabi plays the move king c1. Here I go a6, we get knight d4, and now I play the move knight b6. Now, I will point out once again, with the state of modern chess, long, deep variations like this are actually pretty standard, and at this point, both of us are still blitzing out our moves, and we know exactly what is going on. Fabi goes bishop d3, I play bishop d7, and now we get to move bishop takes h7. Now, this is a move that can either be great or terrible, because after g6, it looks like the white bishop is getting trapped. For those of you guys who have followed chess for a long time, there was a very famous game in the 1972 World Chess Championship match between the first American world champion, Robert James Fischer, also known as Bobby, and the Russian champion, Boris Spassky. Now, in that game, Fischer would get his bishop trapped, just to show you guys a sample idea of what I'm talking about. If we get a position like this, the bishop is trapped behind enemy lines. You move the bishop, I take it, you take, I take with the pawn. Once you lose the bishop, you're down material and you lose the game. Now, normally when a bishop gets trapped like this, what happens is it's usually a king that comes over to actually gobble up the bishop, as opposed to it being a rook. But anytime you take a pawn, it could be h7, it could be a2, like another sample line, something like this, just to illustrate the point. Where after b3, white goes king b2. Anytime you take a pawn on one of these four edge squares with a bishop, you have to be extremely careful that your bishop is not getting trapped. Now, as I pointed out, this is all preparation, so Fabiano knows that when he takes a pawn, the bishop won't get trapped. But for people who are amateurs watching this video, be very, very careful when you take a pawn on h7, a7, a2, or h2 with a bishop, to make sure that when one of these pawns gets pushed forward, the bishop's not going to die. So after bishop takes h7, I play g6, we get to move knight to f3, bishop c6, and now the move knight g5. Now again, I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds of the explanations, but all this is known theory, which is why we're still moving so fast. So here Fabi goes rook g4, I play bishop to d7, now I go bishop to f5, stopping white from winning this pawn on f7 with the knight and the rook. We get h4, and now I play the move king d7. Fabi plays h5, I go knight to d5, and now we get the move rook takes bishop on f5. Now here Fabi sacks the rook with rook takes bishop. This is still known. I take king d6, h6, b5, h7, and now I play the move c6. Fabi queens the pawn, I take, he takes this pawn, checking the king and forking the rook. I move my king, he takes, and now we get the move bishop b4. Now, here I play the move rook to h2, Fabi goes rook f1, and now I play the move a5. And in this position, on move number 35, Fabiano plays the move king d2, and this is the first moment in the game where I don't know my next move. So I spend a bit of time, I decide to play the move a4 here, Fabi goes a3, and now I play the move king d4. Perhaps knight to b6 would be a little bit better, trying to go knight c4 and fork the pawns and the king here, but I end up playing king d4, we get bishop to f3, I play rook h3, bishop g4, and now I play the move rook h2. Fabi goes king e2, I play the move rook to h4, we get king f3, and now I play the move knight f6, attacking the bishop. Now keep in mind here, I am down one pawn, this pawn on f2, but if I can try to trade some pawns on the queen side, I will have great chances to save the game. Fabi goes rook d1, I play king c5, and now we get to move bishop f5. Another very important point that I want to make about this position is that I know, even though I've given up a pawn in this endgame, the computer says it's equal and a draw. And when you know that a position is equal, even if you're down a pawn, it's a lot easier to play, because then you know there will always be some resource, even if you're a little bit scared about some kind of variation. So here I play the move b4, trying to trade off some pawns on the queen side, and now Fabi trades and goes rook to a1. Here I play knight to d5. We get to move bishop d3. Worth pointing out that if white is sloppy and plays a move like c3, I have rook to f4 check, and it's the classic uh-oh spaghetti-o moment. Knight guards the rook, king's got to go. I take the bishop and I win the game. So Fabi goes bishop d3, dodging the rook f4 check, winning the bishop. Here I take, he takes, and now I play the move knight b4, attacking the pawn on c2. Fabi goes king to e2, and now I play the move rook to b1. It's worth pointing out that knight takes pawn is not a move here because white has rook to c4, checking the king. King's got to go, white takes the knight, and now white has an extra bishop and wins. So I go rook to b1. Fabi plays bishop e4, I go rook c1, and now we get to move f4. Now this move is maybe a little bit hasty here. I know that objectively this should be a draw, but in this position if Fabi goes rook to a3, there's some argument that the game will continue for a little bit longer. Instead, we get f4, and now I can play knight d5, attacking the pawn on f4, and setting up a very nasty threat of knight c3 to fork the king, the bishop, and the rook. Now, the reason I say that f4 isn't good, or it's sort of the game ends here, is because now Fabi has to trade the bishop for the knight, and as soon as we get this trade here, we're in a classic rook and pawn endgame. White still has the extra pawn on f4, but at this point, it's a theoretical draw. Now, if white were to play f5, which is another option here, I can perhaps play knight to d6, king d2, take, and then go for this move knight c3, and after bishop d3, king d6, king d2, and knight d5, with the idea of bringing this knight back and then taking the pawn on f5 eventually. It should be a draw. Knight b6, king c3, c5 also leads to a draw here, because at some point I can just wait forever. If white ever brings the king back, I sack the knight, get the 2 pawns, and the game ends peacefully. So after knight d5, Fabi takes, I take back, we get king d3, I start tickling the king. Here he goes king c3, and now I play the move rook to f1, forever attacking this pawn on f4. After I play the move rook to f1, Fabi goes king d2, and now I play the move rook to f3, very importantly cutting off this king for the 3rd rank. The king can no longer come up, all the while keeping pressure on this pawn. Fabi goes king e2, I go rook c3, and here the game ends by repetition after rook to c3. White really can't do anything here. If white plays c4, I can simply go king to e4, and I'm going to win this pawn at f4. If he goes c5, I drop back. Now both pawns are under pressure. This will be a draw as well. So white really can't do anything. If he plays c3 here, I go c5. And after king c2, I can simply play a move like king c6, king d5, and with the rook permanently targeting these 2 pawns, white can never make progress. So that is why after the move rook to c3, the game ends peacefully in a draw. This is a game that maybe for a couple of moves, Fabi had a slight glimmer of hope where he could try to play for more, but this in essence sums up what modern classical chess usually is, where with great preparation you can go very deep into the game, usually around move 25 or move 30, and it's just very simply not a whole lot to play for. So I lock it down. I make a very, very solid draw today with my 3rd black game in a row. This means that I now have 2 draws, 1 win and 1 loss, having had 3 blacks and 1 white in my first 4 games against this elite level of competition. So I can't really be too unhappy. Maybe I could be a bit unhappy with the game against Alireza, but at the end of the day, it isn't that bad. Now, unfortunately, today when I'm rock solid and make a very good draw, my team ends up losing. 2 of the players on our team would lose heartbreaking games. Volodar Murzin would lose, and Teodora Indicic, one of the top 2 female players on our team, would also lose. This means that we lose our 2nd match of the event. That being said, many teams are struggling. It's very bunched up in terms of the top 6 teams that are competing here. So we still have a chance to maybe finish in the top 2 if we finish strong. We also, of course, are going to have many matches where we get white on all the boards since we've had so many blacks in a row. So that's going to do it for my recap for today's 4th round, 3rd, and 4th round matchups of this Global Chess League, which is being held here in Mumbai, India. I'll be back tomorrow with another recap when I play against a 5-time world champion, Vishwanathan Anand from India. That should also be a really hype matchup. But that's going to do it for right now. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap of the last 2 days here of this Global Chess League. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below. And we'll be back with a recap tomorrow after the 5th game in this Global Chess League. See you guys and have a great rest of your day. Bye.